Welcome back to Chronically Planned podcast. I'm your host, Shadrika, and today I'm so honored to introduce someone who truly gets what it means to live and lead with lupus. Holly Beck is a certified lupus coach, wellness educator, and the host of Health Bridge podcast. She helps women reduce flares naturally, reclaim their energy, and find alignment in the midst of chronic illness. Her story is powerful, her presence is calming, and her heart is for this community, and it's real. In this episode, we talk about what it actually looks like to care for yourself beyond surface level advice, how to set boundaries with your body, what it means to break free from survival mode, and how to plan a rhythm of wellness that works for you. So grab your tea, grab your planner, and let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Holly Beck. Hi, Holly.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we've been meeting this connect for so long, and we're just finally here, so I'm excited.
Yes.
So can you walk us through your personal journey with lupus, when your symptoms began, and how your diagnosis unfolded?
Sure. My journey started a little over 20 years ago now, and it actually started with getting mono in my early 20s. Punched me in the face. Basically, I was out of work for a month and a half, and I just never really felt well again after that. It got to the point where my labs looked fine, so doctors were not really sure what to do with me. And basically, the diagnosis I got was, well, we think it's chronic fatigue syndrome, and that usually clears up on its own within 2 years. So basically, like, have fun with that. See ya.
Wow.
Yeah. So I pretty quickly realized that the Western medicine model didn't really have anything that could help me at that point, and I had to figure it out kind of on my own. Keep in mind, I had just gotten out of a really long, or I should say, a really tumultuous relationship, and I was in my mid 20s. I wanted to get my life back on track. I wanted to go out, have friends again, party, do all the
Mhm.
things. And so I was trying to do that, but I would get knocked down for, a week or two at a time with fatigue, or my immune system was just super low. So I'd get sick really easily. And that went on for years. In the meantime, I moved down to San Diego. So, whole new place. Again, wanted to just live my life as if nothing was wrong.
Right.
But in between, you know, trying to be quote unquote normal and working and doing all the things, I was slowly putting my feelers out there towards like what alternatives are there that could help me. And so I tried some kind of energetic medicine, which at the time I didn't really understand and didn't do anything for me. I tried acupuncture, which I totally believe in and has a ton of promise, but I couldn't afford to continue treatments. And I eventually ended up in a local mom and pop herb school learning Western herbalism. And I was super empowered by that because it gave me tools that I could have on hand that I could find sometimes even at the grocery store or on a walk around the neighborhood, wild harvesting dandelion or something like that, to where, I could have these tools to build up my nutrition, build up my own health. And I loved it. I loved herb school. I loved what I learned. I did some energy medicine within there, and had my hands in a few different things. That took me to working at an integrative pharmacy. So I was working with vitamins and supplements and herbs. And, this is all within the span of several years. Eventually got to a point where I just wasn't getting as well as I thought I should with all the tools that I was using.
Mhm.
So I was trying to figure out what else was going on. I started seeing a naturopath. She was convinced that it was Lyme's disease, but that test was like $800. So I didn't want to actually go through and pay for the test. So she eventually recommended me to a really well known integrative rheumatologist in San Diego who is amazing. And I went through my first round of doing ANA testing and looking at the autoimmune spectrum. And that's when I found out that, yes, I was in fact under the mixed connective tissue disease umbrella, kind of the rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or connective tissue disease. It's all sort of under that same umbrella. And he basically told me, you'll probably end up presenting in the next few years as RA or as lupus. So,
Hmm.
funny enough, at that point, I was like, wow, this is so exciting. I kind of know what's going on now instead of being freaked
Right.
out because I'm like, I've been looking at this for years. So with him, I did just supplements. I didn't do any medications. And I was pretty stable. So I stopped seeing him. A few years later, I had some irritation on my scalp and it turned into a bald spot. And I
Hmm.
just kind of ignored it, thinking, well, I had a bout of alopecia before in my early 20s, and I just got some injections in my scalp, and the hair grew back, and it was no big deal. So I just didn't think much of it. Like, I'll get to it. Well, by the time I finally went to the dermatologist to take a look at it, she actually did a biopsy and diagnosed me with lupus. So that was in, I think, 2018. And yeah, so years and years and years before an actual lupus diagnosis was I experiencing lots of different symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. So when you shared that your symptoms started with mono and you weren't diagnosed in 2018, what was that waiting period like emotionally and mentally?
Gosh, up and down, very, very up and down.
Yeah.
I had times where I felt like I was a normal person and it didn't bother me too much. But as soon as I would feel normal enough to go out and do, try to get back in my workout routine or go on some big hike with friends or go party for a weekend, then I would get super run down and that gets really frustrating after a while. And
Yeah.
yeah, I felt like I wasn't normal. I felt like I didn't quite fit in with everybody else. And I just wanted to be normal.
Don't we all?
Mhm.
So, how did you go from managing your symptoms to intentionally designing your life around wellness?
I was trying to do that, I think, all along once I
Right.
started herb school. But at that point, I only had a couple pieces of the puzzle. And it has taken me basically 20 years to find the right pieces to the right puzzle to where I finally got a more full picture view of what lupus is all about, what just chronic illness is all about, and what it's asking of me so that I can heal. Where I finally started really finding a difference in my experience was when I was going through a period where this is pre diagnosis, maybe a year before. I was just really lacking hope for my future. I didn't know where my life was going. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I felt like I grew up in the restaurant industry, which is a great industry, but I also felt like, okay, I can't do this forever.
Right.
So, I was just feeling really out of hope and nothing like clinically depressed, but I was kind of in a depressive state. And that was also when the bald spot started. And since then, I've realized that that was tied in to the emotions at the time. But after that happened, I started opening my eyes to mindset work and
Hmm.
to all the limiting beliefs that I had about myself, about my future, about my health, about what was possible for me. And that was
Hmm.
really the tipping point when I started realizing that I didn't actually have to believe the thoughts that I was used to thinking and that I was used to
Hmm.
believing and used to living by. And I started shifting from what I now see as more of a victim consciousness to more of an empowered state where just because I have the thought, just because I have the pattern doesn't mean I have to believe in it. I
Right.
can just be the
Amen.
observer of it.
Sometimes the things that we think to ourselves is not even true. Like it's not even a real thing. We just made it up and then we believe it. And then our actions stem from that false belief. And so many of us do that every single day.
Yes. Until you finally realize that you're doing that and you start to be able to catch those thoughts as they're happening, we're just stuck in that hamster wheel. But once you can
Hmm.
finally start picking out those thoughts, it's like, oh, I see what's happening. Okay,
Hmm.
I can shift this. And I'm not saying it's easy work by any means, but
No.
it's incredibly rewarding. And it's honestly, I think, the only way we make true shifts is by starting to tackle that mindset piece.
So when you first got that diagnosis, was that your first time being introduced to lupus, the word lupus and like what that looks like? Or did you already know from your herbal background somewhat of what chronic illness would look like?
Well, my mom has lupus. So,
Oh,
yeah, so
okay.
I was familiar, and so it wasn't a surprise when I ended up diagnosed with it as well. I wouldn't say that I knew a ton about lupus, just that she had it and that
Right. Okay.
she was always having all kinds of skin issues, and her eyes around here would always be puffy and cracking and stuff like that. And she had a lot of food allergies. So I kind of understood that there was a lot that went with it, but I didn't really know what that
Mm,
would look like for me.
right.
And of course, since then, I've learned that it looks different for literally every person that has it.
Mm-hmm. It
And there's
does.
so many different ways that it can present. And to be honest, I feel very blessed that I've had it as easy as I have had with lupus.
Mm,
For
yeah.
me, chronic fatigue and the bald spot has been the worst of it.
Really? Okay.
I have some joint pains, I have muscle aches, things like that. But I think because I started in herb school and I've been working on actively trying to better my health every single year, I think that that's played a big role in keeping it to the more
Yeah.
minimal side. But I have been lucky that I have not had any organ involvement at this point. So
Yeah.
we're trying to keep it that way and stay in
Mm-hmm.
remission and just do all the things we can to keep getting a little bit better every day, you know?
So you're in complete remission now where you don't have any symptoms or where you
I
just don't have to be on any medication?
I am on hydroxychloroquine. That's the only medication I take. Do I still need to be on it is debatable. The doctors are afraid to take me off. I'm open to being taken off, but I also feel comfortable being on it. So I'm kind of just letting that one play out for a while. I basically register very low on my C3 and C4, but that's been stable and all my other blood work has been stable. So for several years now. So the skin issue has not been active for several years. So we're just trying to keep it that way. The doctors say that's technically remission. I
Okay.
believe that I can get better than that and reduce the fatigue that it still flares up from time to time. And that's what I'm currently working on and working on my C3 and C4.
Means to some people may not.
Right.
But so in this time, a lot of the times when we are navigating our struggles and our issues and looking for community to feel safe and kind of get guidance, what made you want to speak up and serve others in the lupus community?
Because it shouldn't take someone 20 years to figure out how to support their fundamental health.
Yeah.
So that's my big mission is to shorten that learning curve for women with lupus or women under the autoimmune umbrella, wherever they fall, because it's important to work with your medical doctors. Absolutely 100%. But they don't teach you, unless you have a really, really special one, they don't teach you how to support your health on a fundamental level. And that includes mindset as well as the standard nutrition, the hydration, the movement of the body, how to breathe, how to regulate your sleep cycles. Those are the things that make such a huge difference in flares because if we're not sleeping well, for example, we're not in the rest and digest phase where our body can actually repair some damage. So if we're chronically tired because we're not sleeping a solid, 7 to 9 hours a day, sometimes 10 with chronic fatigue or chronic illness, we're not giving our body the support that it needs to do the best that it can. And there's so many other things that lead to the breakdown in communication within just on the cellular molecular level. And so if
Hmm.
we can do things on our own to support that communication system within the body, well, what is autoimmune, right? It's where your body is not communicating with itself and it's attacking itself. Well, how do we create more communication in the body? Those are the things that I teach on. And how can we create less inflammation? The basics. That's what we need to be taught.
Yeah. So, how has coaching and sharing your journey shaped your healing in new ways?
How has it shaped my healing,
Mhm.
my coaching?
Mhm.
I think just it keeps me on task, right? Keeps me
Right.
accountable.
Right.
So, I can't be a hypocrite if I'm coaching people. So it keeps me accountable to sticking with my daily routines, sticking with better nutrition, things like that. But also, I think just bringing me closer to other women in this community is so important. I just think community is the most important aspect of healing. We can't
Yeah.
heal if we're alone. And it's so easy for women who are struggling with health issues like lupus to feel really alone because the people around them, whether they mean well or not, they don't understand what they're actually going through. So
Yeah.
I think just being able to have those kind of more heart to heart connections with women is healing on its own.
So, can you share a little bit more about the Health Bridge podcast and the coaching program that you do offer?
Yeah, definitely. So I have the Health Bridge podcast, which plays off of my coaching, but it's all things health and mindset. And even though each guest that I have on may not specifically be tied to lupus, we always tie the topic into how can it benefit somebody with an autoimmune condition or a chronic health issue. So I have such an incredible wide array of guests on. Basically, well, you're going to be on it soon, which I'm really excited about.
Mhm.
So I do have some very specific lupus episodes in addition to the more broader topics. But my mission with the podcast is to just educate people on all of the possibilities out there that can empower their health journey. So it's not a platform for us to be woe is me about
Yeah,
our
girl.
struggles.
Yes.
Like, that's important too. It's okay to
Yeah.
let those emotions out as long as we can not dwell on them, right? And so the
Mhm.
podcast is to show you all the other ways that you can empower your journey by, hey, maybe this person has something that would benefit me, or this person has an idea that I could play off of. And I think the more that we are empowered in our own health journey and the more we can advocate for ourselves, the healthier we can become, the healthier we become, the more available we can be for our friends and family, the ones that matter most to us, the more we can feed into them, the more that feeds out into the community on a broader and larger scale. So basically, in a nutshell, what I want to do is change the world by changing the way we approach our health journey.
That's great.
So,
I love
yeah,
that.
so that's the podcast. And then my Health Bridge coaching program is basically coaching women on how to build, I say, the fundamental pillars of their health bridge. So, again, that's things like, you need a solid foundation to build a bridge on. So, what is that foundation? We're talking again about mindset. We're talking about laying the foundation for good nutrition, for healthy hydration, for healthy sleep cycles, and just building that foundation. Once you have that foundation built, we can do all the other things to build the bridge. So you can get from, I call it basically your hell island, your the depths of your chronic health issue and cross that bridge over to heaven island, your vision of the future, your a space where you are healthy enough to do the passion, like to follow your passions, to be there present for your friends and family. And so I work with women both one on one. I'm working on getting actually a community together so we can do group coaching calls
Mhm.
because, again, that community aspect. And then there's also online modules that go along with it that walk them through the whole process.
So, how does the mindset and the spiritual growth play in how you stay grounded in difficult seasons?
Yeah. Well, difficult seasons. I mean, prior to learning more about spirituality and learning about mindset work, I just saw things more black and white. I saw them as more that my thoughts were, I was being realistic, right? I wasn't being negative. I would
Mhm.
always, my
Okay.
boyfriend would call me out on stuff. You're being negative. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm being realistic. And
Right.
that was the truth until I
Mhm.
finally started peeling back the layers of those thoughts and realizing, like, why do I believe that to be true? Why do I believe that to be realistic? Is that actually the truth? And when it comes to, what's an example? I used to get really, really, really bad stomach bloat. And I mean, to where I've been asked how many months I pregnant I was, like this is not
Yeah,
normal
I
all the
have
time.
had that.
Yeah. Still pops up from time to time, but I can clear it a lot faster now. But I used to get so upset at my own body. And I would say the worst things to myself, what's wrong with you? Why don't you work right? And to me, that was the truth. My body wasn't working right. That was realistic. But what I
Mhm.
started to believe, or what I started to learn, was that actually my body's doing the best it can.
Mhm.
I should acknowledge it for that. And just because it's not functioning optimally right now, it's asking me to listen to it. So, what does it
Right.
need from me? What does it need me to hear in this message of this stomach bloat? Where is my responsibility in this to help it heal? And so, little things like that, when I am struggling, yes, I will allow myself a little tantrum. That's fine. But I have the tools to get through it so much faster now. And it's like, okay, got that off my chest. Now we get to now we get to work.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what are some simple moments in your day that bring you joy or rest or energy?
Definitely. And I never would have thought that I would say this until I finally started doing it. But getting up at sunrise, or as close to sunrise as possible, and getting outside and seeing the sky light up with my own eyes as opposed to through a closed window, actually getting outside to get sunlight in actually into my eyes, that brings me joy. I started doing it because that is one of the best ways that you can reset your circadian rhythm and reset hormonal processes through your body, reset a better sleep cycle and a solid, restful sleep. That's why I started doing it.
Mhm.
I didn't expect the joy and the mood lift to come out of it, but it works like immediately. As soon as I step outside, it's like it's so beautiful out here.
Yeah.
And, it just sets the tone for the day.
Mhm.
And usually I'll touch a plant or I'll take my shoes off for a minute in the grass if I have time, if I'm not running to work. But so I get some grounding in, I get the fresh air, I get the red light, the natural red light from the sun coming up. And it has made such a difference in my mood during the day and also in my sleep at night.
So, do you currently work out and outside of the podcasting things that you do?
I do. I still do. I'm looking forward to the day where I don't have to do that. But I currently do work part time. I work with a chiropractor, so I help him in his office, which is a really fun and holistic place to work. So it kind of goes along with my own mission. He's
Mhm.
actually been on my podcast too, my chiropractor. And because I grew up in the restaurant industry, I do still have ties there. So I work with a chef who specializes in farm to table food preparation, and we do private dinners, and I do some catering events with her. We have a huge farm dinner coming up, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be about, I think, 150 or 200 people. And, we're serving at the farm, and we're serving the food that is grown on the farm and grown locally. So I still take a lot of joy in doing those events. So yeah, I have a lot of things that I do in addition to the coaching and the podcast. So it's kind of a lot.
Yeah, but it's still cool because I feel like with that outside stuff, it keeps you thriving. It still keeps you feeling like you are normal and you can do those normal activities and just feeling good about yourself and your capabilities.
Yeah.
So to tie everything in, I really want to know like how do you stay chronically planned and organized throughout your life for all the things that you're doing?
Girl, we should probably talk after we're done recording because I do need some help
Okay.
with that. But,
Okay.
trying to I live by my Google Calendar, to be honest.
Mhm.
So everything goes on the calendar, and I let that sort of run my day. There are certain things that I'm not good at scheduling in yet, so I'm still working on that. But yeah, it's a work in progress. I have
Mhm.
been a chronic procrastinator most of my life, so I do things
Mhm.
when the deadline comes up. and I'm trying to get out of that pattern currently.
Right.
So learning how to schedule things ahead of time as far as like automation with the
Yeah.
business, with coaching and stuff like that. That's what I'm currently working on, and currently working on streamlining just all of those processes until I
Yeah.
can hire a virtual assistant to help me.
Let me do it.
Great.
Okay. So, how can the Chronically Planned community stay connected with you and get support from your work?
Definitely, Instagram is where I hang out. So I am on Instagram at I am Holly Beck. And I do have some links in my bio where you can find the podcast, which is the Health Bridge podcast. It's on YouTube and all the streaming platforms. I am really trying to boost my YouTube channel. So if you happen to be a YouTube follower, I'd love for a subscribe on there. And yeah, I also have a link for a free daily lupus guide and symptom tracker. And those really lay out the basics of, where to start with shifting your life practices that can support that foundational health. Everything's very, very easy. That doesn't always mean it's simple when you try to change your routine, but that gives
Yeah.
you the daily guide and the kind of layout that you want to shoot for to start with. And then things can be fine tuned from there. But that's kind of the basics of what I do and the basics of what I coach on in my community. And the symptom tracker is really important because it can help you in identifying triggers that you maybe didn't realize were there. Um,
Hmm.
it gives some guides for some mindset prompts and some gratitude prompts, but it can just be your little simple daily journal that you do for 5 to 10 minutes a day. And you can get some really big benefit out of it if you stay consistent with that. So I have a free download linked in my bio for that as well.
Yay. I might have to get that.
Awesome.
So, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and your conversation and everything that you shared. And until next time, the Chronically Planned community, we'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I hope this episode blessed you in the way it blessed me. If Holly's words resonated, be sure to follow her at Holly Beck. I hope this episode blessed you the way it blessed me. If Holly's words resonated, be sure to follow her at I am Holly Beck and tune into her podcast, The Health Bridge. And if you're ready for support in planning your own life with faith, flexibility, and purpose, come join me in the Chronically Planned Inner Circle. We start soon, and I'd love to have you. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.